The tool that I wanted to explore today is called Socrative, and it's a very interesting tool that can be used by educators from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. So I want to dive into that and show you how it relates to the three principles of the UDL framework. So let's just start off. We'll go into the teacher login, sign in with Google. Okay, and here we are. So this is showing the three main features and the three uses of this website. One is if you want to give a quiz to students. Secondly, you can play a fun game, which is the space race, and it lets the class group into teams and have a little competition while still learning educational material. And finally, exit ticket, which we all know and love. And I guess down here there's a fourth, which is a quick question if you're just trying to throw something out there. Now, let's talk about the multiple means of representation in the UDL framework, and specifically we'll start with providing options for comprehension. As the teacher, you have a lot of scope or a lot of control over the scope of the material that you're going to present, in addition to the content and how it's going to be arranged. So that's finding those options for comprehension really fall on your shoulders, because I wouldn't say this program, it doesn't provide that for you. And I would note that I don't think this program is necessarily ideal as like the first activity in a new unit. I think it's will garner more results if it's used a little bit later in the unit. Now, providing options for language, mathematical expressions, and symbols. When teachers are creating questions, and we can create questions in our quizzes section over here. So you have a few quizzes already set up, so why don't we dive into this one over here. So here's the setup, and as you can see, life cycle of a frog. Question number 1, what is the first stage of a frog's life cycle? Now, this is a question that I created, all the answers I created. And you look here, I can add an explanation at the end. Frogs are amphibians, amphibians lay eggs, young amphibians hatch out eggs. Now, after the student answers this question, the teacher can choose to allow the student to see the correct answer and the explanation afterward. So in that regard, you are clarifying different, you can clarify vocabulary, you can clarify any confusion, and of course the student can ask for teacher support as needed. Now, it's also interesting to note that ESOL learners are not getting left behind. You can create multiple quizzes, and perhaps it's the same quiz in a different language, and administer those quizzes simultaneously, assuming you have the pro version of the software, which is about $30 a month, depending where you live. But in that way, you're really able to test the students' content knowledge, as opposed to having that barrier, that language barrier, in which you're getting some results, but you're not really sure why or what's causing a difficulty, perhaps. Now, providing options for perception. One thing I wish this website or what this tool had available was a way to embed some auditory information or something along those lines where students, perhaps if they have a decoding problem, they would have that kind of support. But it doesn't, so that falls on you. And you have the power to have the questions presented one by one with the delay in between each one. And I think that's really how you're going to present those other forms is you pause the quiz and then you tell students, or you show them a video, or you do something physical, and therein you get your multiple forms of representation. Now, the second UDL focus is providing multiple means of action and expression. And the first component of that is providing options for executive functions. Now, I think this is a good tool because it really helps students monitor their own progress in a time, like, immediately. If you think about quizzes in the past, it was always fill out this Scantron and wait 2 or 3 days to get the answers back. But here, the teacher can allow students to see the answer immediately, and they have the option to go back and take the quiz again. At the same time, the teacher can monitor their answers individually. They can monitor which questions are causing the most difficulty, and that gives them a good idea of what they need to focus on in the next lesson, which is promoting executive functions. Providing options for expression and communication. Teachers actually have some control over that, because even though you can't put audio in, you can embed some pictures in, and that's providing another tool or form of representation which can help students learners, especially if they're visual learners. And teachers have some control over or I suppose all control over the progression of questions, and can individually provide other content such as video or audio outside of the activities presented. The final component of this principle is providing options for physical action. It's pretty obvious, being that this is a software program, there's not physical action within the program. However, the teacher could turn any of these questions, perhaps question number 3, into a prompt or a command. So it could be like, stand up against the wall and pretend to be camouflaged. Once you complete that action, the teacher could give them a code, and they would choose the code down here that was correct. So that's how you would work some action into there. The final one that we're looking at, nope, not the final. Yes, the final one, providing multiple means of engagement. And we're looking at providing options for self-regulation. Now, when using this tool on a daily basis, I think teachers need to emphasize that it's a tool to help learners progress. It's not a tool that teachers use to judge learners or rank them in terms of ability. And I think that reduces the pressure on learners, and it increases their willingness to try, even if they encounter some difficulties. It also offers frequent opportunities for self-assessment, as teachers can provide immediate feedback after each question. And I think that helps students with their student regulation. It also provides options for sustaining effort and persistence. The space race is a good example of that. And let me show you what that looks like. So we can go back to launch, and we'll launch a space race. Life cycle of a frog. Next. Okay. And we're going to do 2 teams. Countdown none, and start the space race. Now, when learners log in, they are going to be auto-assigned to a team, and then the teams will answer questions together. As each person answers a question correct, the icon here moves across and eventually reaches the end. So it's a fun way to build community, and I think a little friendly competition can keep it interesting and help sustain some persistence when you're working with material that might be more challenging. And endurance is very important if you're going to maximize the usage of your time in school. And finally, for sustaining effort and persistence, this is kind of related, but I also think it's important to note, is when you're creating these quizzes, and the quizzes can be used for the space race or exit ticket, when you're creating them, you can actually choose the specific standard that it's associated with. So I chose science, I chose standard of learning. It also has, so the Virginia Standard of Learning, it also has Common Core, and it has all of these different standards that you can work with. Second grade, and then here are the standards that would be relevant to that, which I think is pretty cool. And that it increases the student salience of goals and objectives as it becomes more apparent what we're focusing on today. What's the overarching goal of today's activity? Now, providing options for recruiting interest. This goal, I wouldn't say is explicitly evident in the program, but that doesn't mean it can't be integrated. Any teacher could create multiple quizzes or games which reflect the specific interests of their learners, and students can then choose the activity which is most relevant or interesting to them. And in that way, students have some say over it, and they are more engaged in the material. Now, how would we incorporate this into an instructional or in our instructional plans? Well, there are many ways, and I mean the few that I'm going to list are just the tip of the iceberg. One way I think you could use this is as a review resource. So, say you have a test coming up in the next couple days, or midterms, or whatever. You can use the space race as a fun way to review the materials. Students get to participate. They feel excited because they're on a team, and it's an exciting way to relearn some of that material or reignite it inside them. The results page I want to talk about too, because that's specifically relevant to the teacher. Get reports. So you can download them, email or Google Drive. You can also view a chart, so let's look at that. Now, if the student had come in here, each student would be listed down below here, and you would see what they answered for each question, whether it was right or wrong. Now, it's cool that you can kind of look at the questions and see where the problems are. Because this should, if you use this, it should have a direct effect on your future lesson plans. You should be looking at this and saying, okay, what areas do we have to spend more time on? What areas do they have we can move on from? So you're more specific and more intentional about what comes next. And I think that is an extremely useful tool for teachers, and it is great for incorporating into instructional plans. Finally, I would say it's great for station work. This whole program is very straightforward. It's a very simple layout. Even for the students, as you can see, it's pretty easy to use. So student login. Now room name is I always have the same room name. It's going to be this number up here. So I'm going to do my room name, join, and it's waiting for an activity to begin. So let's start a quiz as the teacher. We're starting as a quiz as a teacher over here, and we'll use the life cycle of a frog. We'll give instant feedback, so the student, after each question, they get the answer, and then we'll start that up. Okay, so it's started. On the student side, let's do this again. Log back in, name Nat, and here's question 1. So what is the first stage of a frog's life cycle? The student answers D, submits the answer, correct. You got your explanation down here, and you move on to the next question. At the same time, the teacher is seeing the results in real time. So they see that Matt got this right, and the results are coming across here. Now, I think this is, and I kind of went on a little tangent, but this is great for station work because it's really easy to use, as you can see. Questions, there's no distractions. And it is something that even a first grader could do with limited instruction and a little limited guidance. So it's a valuable tool in that way. As the teacher are working with one group, another group could be doing these activities independently. So those are 3 great ways to use it in your instructional plans. Overall, I think it's a great tool, and it's one that I hope to use in the future.